Well, good morning. Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and always a delight to have with us today. Really, I consider one of my dear friends, Dave Crowe. Dave is the Executive Director of Restore America. And I tell you, one of the warriors out there on the front line doing so much. And I want to encourage you to certainly check out Restore America's website. It's an incredible resource. And we have a lot to talk about today. I have David for the whole hour. So I think you're going to learn a lot and be challenged a lot. So, buddy, good to see you. How you doing, my friend?
You too. I really appreciate this. We're going to have a good time.
Yeah, good to see you, Dave. And boy, there's a lot going on. I told our audience earlier, you either want to hold on to your wallet tonight or kiss it goodbye.
I think that's what the Republicans in the Congress and Senate ought to be thinking for sure, and doing their best to commit themselves to preventing it from being goodbye. So anyway, it doesn't surprise me at all. You said I was the director of America. I wouldn't mind being that right now because I think anything's better than what we've got.
Yeah. Well, let's get into this. I want to get into an article you sent to us and forwarded on, and that is about America's slipping sense of duty. But let's go back a little bit first, David. We came through the election cycle. Have you had a chance to digest the stats and what happened in the state of Oregon of who voted and who didn't vote?
Well, to a certain extent, it gets kind of fuzzy because they report only certain things. What I'd like to do is get George Varna and the United in Purpose people to do a deep survey of Oregon's Christians and find out what percentage really we do have. I was working off the 30% that the Pew site had given, and I don't think that's right. I don't think there are near as many born again and evangelical Christians in Oregon as Pew thinks there are. But at any rate, the evangelical vote is hard to come by, but I do have some statistical summaries that I put together from the state elections division after both the primary and the general election. And those things I think are pretty interesting compared to the article that you folks referred to me, and I've gone over that. So fire away with questions. I'll see what I can do.
Okay, go ahead. Share with us what you got there.
Well, some people may want to take a pen or pencil in hand. I'll try and go slow here and just give the more important things. But the state of Oregon figures the population of Oregon is based on July 1 of 2013. Actually, that's about 16 months too early for their projections, and I think their projections for the population are off by about 30,000. So we won't quibble with that, but they say that the population is almost 4 million. So the population of the voting age in Oregon is 3 million, a little over 3 million, 353,000. So the estimated eligible voters in Oregon is almost 3,000, 2,977,000. The total registered voters in Oregon for the November 4th election, according to their numbers, were 2,174,000. So the percentage of eligibles, and when they talk about eligibles voting, they're talking about those who are registered. To them, that's right. They're right in a way. The eligibles are those who are registered to vote. But it doesn't really take into account all of those people who are eligible but not registered to vote. So they figure the percent of eligibles registered to vote is 73%. And I think it's higher than that, actually. The number of ballots returned for the November 4th general election was 1,541,782. So the percent of registered voters voting was 70.9%, or about just figure 71%. So that's the registered voters. Now that's accurate. They know precisely how many voted and how many were registered. So they're right on right there. But the evangelical population in Oregon, and I think your folks are probably interested in that, according to the Pew, if you use the Pew Foundation Religion and Public Life, they say 30%. So I figured from that 1,184,700 evangelicals who are eligible to vote. So the actual eligible to vote amongst that is 1,912,219. The registered to vote, you figure the state's number is at 70%, is 638,553. So actually, you have a lot more Christians who are eligible to vote, but they're not registered to vote. And so the state doesn't take that into account. And that's where you get some very interesting stats when you consider that we really need to know more about the evangelicals and the born-agains in the state of Oregon, because really those folks just didn't seem to show up in the election. And that's what we've seen across the country. Now, across the country, the average for the turnout of all was only 36%. I think it was 36.4%, which is the lowest turnout since World War II. And the last one in 2010 was 41%. So when you start looking at all the history of these things, the actual voter registration is down, and certainly that's true in evangelicals and born-agains. But the actual turnout for these elections is low as well. And so we're seeing what this article that you folks brought my attention to is reflecting. And there is not that same commitment to voting, to a duty to vote, as there has been in the past, and particularly in our younger generation. So we're not doing the job at helping our young people or teaching our young people in school about their duties as a citizen if we're going to maintain a republic.
You know, a couple things here, Dave. One is, for the most part, the country went red. Oregon went more blue. And it's probably directly reflects upon these percentages. 36.4% is dismal, to say the least. And if the evangelicals didn't engage, we got what we got. And then just the last couple of days ago, Kate Brown, Secretary of State, is proposing a sweeping bill that would allow all those who are eligible but not registered to vote. I don't know how we're going to police that, but it seems to me that the left sees an opportunity here to really take unbelievable control of the state of Oregon, where the conservative would never have a chance if that was able to get through. And you got to remember now, the Democratic increases in the House and the Senate were significant.
Yes, they were. The primary turnout in Oregon was only 35, almost 36%. And that's where we lose out. And you're absolutely right. People don't like the idea of a conspiracy, but when you consider what's been going on in this country, there's more evidence for conspiratorial planning, and it goes on. I mean, folks, we're in an age where communication is very simple, and you can do it by group, you can do it every which way today, but frankly, the radical Democrats, and virtually, it seems to me like they're the majority of the Democrat Party now, is that they're planning the demise of any opposition. In other words, they want to totally dominate. And you wouldn't know that by this last election because people were so upset about what's going on, and the conservatives turned out their vote. We turned out the vote, and so you're able to take back the Senate. But in the state of Oregon, which is dominated really, truly by the cabal in Multnomah County and Lane County, and that's what we get. We get the rest of the state totally dominated by the people who have an agenda. And Kate Brown is one of them. She's part of that. So you and I, who've been around long enough, know the individuals who are involved in this, and they plan the demise of any opposition to their plans. And that's exactly what's coming down from the White House as well, and the radical Democrats that are still being elected into the Senate. So that is a huge problem. And I think you and I have discussed this a lot in the past, but the problem is that the sleeping giant, the evangelicals, refuse to come out of their coma. And that's for a lot of reasons, which you and I both know. And
well, there's so much in this. I want to ask you one more question before we take a break, and then we'll get into the slipping of that sense of duty. But in this last election cycle, the evangelicals were unable to get enough signatures on the ballot to stop our state tax dollars for paying for 8 abortions a day. We couldn't even get that issue to resonate among the churches. So the slip and the slide, to me, is alarming.
Well, it is. I will tell you that I have a good friend here, a pastor in Middle Tennessee, and he wrote me in response to one of my recent emails. He wrote me and said, David, he said, I don't think we're going to recover, and here's why. He said, I have more people in my congregation, and this is a Southern Baptist church. He said, I have more people in my church who are for abortion than those who will stand up against it. And he says, no matter what I preach, no matter what I do, they're set in their way. And they bought into separation of church and state. They bought into a woman's right to have an abortion. For all of those reasons, the public has been so sold. They've heard so much from the other side, and way too much silence from our side. You've got to have a lot of voices, and it's got to penetrate deeply. And here in the state of Tennessee, which is very conservative, one of the most conservative in the country, this last election, we have a rhino governor, and he has aspirations to go beyond being governor, but he embraced Common Core when the people here in the state do not want it. Do not want it. And the teachers can't stand it. But you can't get Haslam to do anything. And the reason why is because the way the Obama administration got this sold and bought into at the state level in a lot of states is said, you will not get this grant money unless you take this. Mm-hmm. It's federal money. They control us with money. And once you get on the government dole, it's hard to get off. And so it's money. It comes down to promising federal money. And now we're going to hear from Obama tonight, at least I hear that we're going to hear this, is he's going to increase taxes, or he wants to do that. And of course, the Republicans are going to say no. But the reason for these huge increases in taxes is to pay for all the things that they have promised and the entitlements and everything else. So we've got a federal government that's out of control, and we've got some state governments still under the aegis of guys like Kitzhaber and Kate Brown and others who want the government money, and they'll do practically anything to get it. So it's a source of revenue. Okay. And they have the printing press, so they can print it.
Let me take a quick break here, Dave. We'll come back. When we do, I want to talk about the sense of this, or the slipping sense of American duty. It's alarming. And we want to get into some of the reasons that are slipping through the cracks with David Crowe, Restore America, coming up in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Okay, we're back with David Crowe. He is the Executive Director of Restore America. And again, let me encourage you to check out their website, restoreamerica.org. It is an incredible resource for everybody, and especially for you pastors. And also support David there when you go there. And if you feel led, support him, because he's working, yes, in Oregon, but literally all across the country, and just passionately trying to get us to register and then to get us to vote. And so help them. But again, it's restoreamerica.org. All right, David, let's get back to this 5 things to note about Americans' slipping sense of duty. And it does play right into the 36% of voter turnout, which is unbelievable. Why do you sense this is happening? And I guess demographically it shows up as well. I want to get into that. But why do you think there is a slipping of this sense of American duty?
Well, I think there are a lot of reasons for that, but I think fundamentally we have seen the Protestant ethic. We've seen our morals in the country. I was in California during the counterculture revolution. I lived in the Berkeley foothills. I was in the Navy, and you could see and trace that whole revolution in California, swept across the country, has now got deep foundations. We've got an educational system that is run by the government. It's not run by parents. It's not run by local school boards. It's run by the federal government because of their controlled money. And so we've taken prayer out of the schools. We've taken Bible reading out of the schools. The efforts are really to shut down Christianity. We're seeing that more and more and more. Our academic institutions, when they bought into Darwinian evolution, way back when, the Scopes monkey trial, the Christians began to vacate the public arena. And so we have seen an absolute loss of our Christian values in schools, in our public institutions, our higher halls of education, higher learning, if you would want to call it that. We see more and more universities trying to shut down the Christian voice in the public square, and their academic institutions, and the blasting. The faculty feels free to blast Christians and try and drive everybody's. But all of this, there's a growing rebellion in America to anything that restricts our quote unquote freedoms. So liberty has gone way beyond what our founders intended and what the Lord intended. Liberty is to set people free from the power of sin and death. Mm-hmm. And that liberty is what Christ came to set us free.
Mm-hmm. Part of that, David, is we have seen recently the demonization of the military, of police, anything in authority, and that's playing into a big part as to why certain, the younger generation doesn't sense a obligation to volunteer, to be involved. It appears that the propaganda that America's too big, too imperialistic, too intrusive, that message has registered with a lot of people, and that so there's no sense of this duty to want to come out and protect it. I think part of that, as David has played into and certainly referred to, is that we have lost or ignored or perhaps even strategically removed the history of the United States, and especially the Christian history of the United States. So it's all mounted up. I mean, this is heavy stuff to deal with. But when you look at a lack of sense of duty, in other words, we don't see ourselves as running out to do something on a voluntary basis. Now, these are broad statements, don't get me wrong, because I think it also provides a unique opportunity for the church to fill in the gap. And there are a lot of churches that are doing that. A lot of churches are feeding the poor. A lot of organizations and Christian organizations are doing that. The Salvation Army, Gospel missions, and other things like that are filling in those things. But we don't seem to see the sense of importance to engage ourselves into the process, because we seem to be overwhelmed with all the nonsense that the process has developed. I'm amazed of how many Christians are disengaging and saying, well, why bother when my vote really doesn't count anyway? And that when you have a president that is in a imperialistic mode, Some would say even a dictatorial mode. He's doing what he wants without checks and balances. That's one reason why we have a low turnout, because why bother? On the other hand, we did have a significant turnaround in this last election cycle. It shows you what can happen when we get involved. So we'll take a quick break. We'll reconnect with David Crowe with Restore America. And again, it's restoreamerica.org. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're back, and we have David Crowe with us today. He is the Executive Director of Restore America, and again, restoreamerica.org, an incredible resource for you. And when you're there, you'll see all the things that are available and the information. He puts it up there. It's absolutely free. And if you feel led, support him. And let me encourage you to do that. All right, David, sorry about that disconnect there, but getting back to this slipping sense of duty, there's quite a things that contribute to this, and it seems to be somewhat generational. It looks like the younger generation has a lesser sense of duty when it comes to American values, or feeling like they should protect them, or even into the volunteer stage of helping people or volunteering of themselves. And I wonder, is cynicism a part of this? I mean, if you listen to the talk shows, why get up and put your pants on in the morning?
I think it is. I think there is a lot of cynicism, and I think you're right on the heart of that. And it comes from losing the culture, losing the Christian message and theology that there is a God, and life is really found through the liberating power of God. And that message, we just don't have a Billy Graham like we used to have. We don't have a solid message, and it's not reverberating. And so when you look at the demise, the slow demise or rapid demise of our government and the control that is being exerted there, pretty soon you see, like we've seen with the bills that are being pushed through, the executive orders, Obamacare, not one Republican voted for it. And so you've got a whole segment of the population that is really turned off by that. And how all of this has been done, and then all the lying, all the obfuscation, a dishonest federal government, intrusion into our lives. A lot of people say, you know, it doesn't make any difference anymore to vote. They're totally out of control, and we're not going to change it. So I think you see a lot of cynicism about any ability to change anything, and you see the corruption of the voting itself. All of these things go along with what we're seeing today. And so you lose that morality, you change that morality, you redefine marriage, you redefine what's moral, you redefine the family, and they're redefining the power of the federal government, and the executive, the chief executive, the president himself, is going off script. He's going off constitution and literally taking things into his own hands. And so there is a great deal of concern. And frankly, when you consider the ways and calamities that can happen here in this country under this president, and the things that our government has done and put us into $18 trillion of debt, and no chance of ever digging out of that and leaving that with our kids, it's no wonder people give up on voting. They do, and they don't think it's worth it. So there is a sense of duty amongst a lot of folks, and they're voting and whatnot, but a vast number of people are not. And they've lost confidence in the government. They've also grown too confident in their rights. And they believe that as the sun comes up, America will be the same tomorrow too, and it will be just hunky-dory. But I personally think that we're headed for calamity, serious calamity, economic, you name it. We are weaker than we ever been, and most people are living in denial about all of that. And the only way that I can see that we change this or turn it around is that the people must re-engage. They must register. They must pay attention to what's going on. and they must recognize that we, the people, should govern and make these decisions, and through our representatives, and make sure we put in people who have a Christian worldview. If we don't do that, if we succumb to the secularists, they will run us right into the ground. They have already.
There's a little bit of a hope here. I mean, we got to look back at the past election and realize it was a significant turnover in the House, and certainly the Senate was a huge take back. So there seems to be a pushback, a philosophical pushback in America. We don't want to go down this road. We don't want this president getting away with what he's getting away with. And the other thing here that's kind of interesting, it appears that most of these incoming lawmakers, both in the House and the Senate, are strongly pro-life. And so
yes,
there's something brewing here. Can we capitalize on this movement and push it all the way through, say, 2016?
Well, we've all been hearing about the division in the Republican Party between the conservatives. And believe me, Boehner, he's tried to marginalize most of those guys. And that's what's happening, is that the old guard, who has a seniority and has a control, they're marginalizing a lot of these conservative voices. The Congressional Prayer Caucus, I would encourage people to go to that and find out what's really happening there. But I also saw that 92% of all of those who are elected are committed evangelical Christians. So a lot of good is happening. We need to pray for our Congress, and for our representatives, for our Senate, that they would get back on track and they would put their heels down and say to Obama, we're not letting you take over this government. And we need to get rid of a lot of things like Obamacare, period. And Ted Cruz is right about that. I mean, a lot of these guys who are conservative are sticking their necks out on the line and really taking strong stands. And that's what this nation needs. We frankly don't need another set of rhinos and Romney and Jeb Bush running. And I know that sounds crazy to a lot of people, but these guys are truly not real conservatives. And they're not going to make the changes. They're not going to step in and make the tough decisions.
Yeah, and some of those polls are indicating that now, that even though they're coming out of the chutes with fairly good poll numbers, it's obviously early in the game, the bottom line is that they are certainly the moderates within the party, and most of the voters who voted for the change in November are saying no to these guys early on.
Yeah, and Ted Cruz is right. If you further marginalize the conservatives and keep throwing these rhinos up at us, these middle-of-the-roaders who are not going to make the changes, you're going to lose the entire election because you're going to lose the conservative vote. The conservatives are much more powerful in this country, even amongst Democrats, conservative Democrats. And the independents, the non-affiliateds, the Republican Party needs to grow itself. They need to get back to what it's really all about. But the moderates and Karl Rove and those guys, they don't want to do that. They're more libertarian. They want to control the power from above with the purse strings of the Republican Party. And that is going to be their demise.
What does your research show, Dave, on younger voters, or at least the younger generation? Have they bought into the lie of separation in church and state? Are they politically engaged? Are they passionate about rescuing America, or are they part of this slipping sense of duty crowd?
Well, it depends. If you are a homeschool high school or college student, if you're homeschooled, you're pretty conservative. And they're the ones who turned out. Of the younger generation who are registered to vote, they turned out. And so then it's a question of what kind of education you got, what kind of college you went to, what that value system. You may be a libertarian. And so you've got these different visions within the party and within the nation, and it's hard to tell which way it goes. But even the evangelical vote, about 25, 26% of those vote very liberally. And that tells us something about what we're teaching our young people. We really need to get back to teaching a course on citizenship in our high schools and the Constitution, so they have an understanding of what our true history is in this country. Thank David Barton for his work in Texas. That's very important. But the things that I'm reading tell me that we have a confused younger generation, many of whom are into my rights, and all you have to do is watch the guy that goes down on the beaches and whatnot, Waters World on Fox News, and listen to the questions that he asks these young people. They don't have a clue. They don't have a clue, and they're not interested. All they're interested in is partying and having a good time in life, and they don't understand anything about what makes the nation and what makes them free. So we've got a serious problem here, and we're neglecting it. And the only way that I see that's going to change is in our Christian colleges, our Christian high schools, and our pulpits. And the pulpits have got to start leading. They've got to start retraining us back in the Word with regard to our responsibility as citizens of Earth.
Boy, well said, because there's another analogy. I've never looked at it this way, but the struggle within the Republican Party between the moderate and the conservative in an interesting way is the struggle that's going on with the church right now. Do we stay traditional in our theology, or do we stretch it over into a seeker-friendly type mode? And that is dividing the church. So if you got a divided conservative party and a divided church, well, a house divided against itself can't stand.
No, and just to give you an illustration of this, I don't know if you've read the book The Shack.
Yeah, long time ago.
Have you? It's a heretical, blasphemous book. And someone told me the other day that Pat Robertson has gotten behind us now. You know, they're making a movie about The Shack, and Pat Robertson has even put his stamp of approval on it. That tells you what kind of division we have. But as an evangelical, biblical Christian, you can't come out and support that kind of writing. It's just totally blasphemous. It sounds great. Reads well. A lot of people, it's very popular with a lot of people because it kind of fits their own theology and what they want it to say. So this is the kind of stuff, monumental. I think that's extremely important. The work that Kurt Cameron and Marshall Foster, I think, has been involved in some of that. And so is Herb Titus, guiding through on a lot of these principles and the history. We have to have that kind of information getting out to the Christian community and being shown in our churches, etc. If we don't do that, this remnant will grow smaller, and we will grow more marginalized as they are trying to marginalize us now. You can see all of those things happening, and of course, the pushback in Houston was huge. That was extremely important across the country.
Dave, why do you sense there is no pushback in Congress on the abuse of powers with the president? Even with the incoming Congress, and the turnover, especially in the Senate, you would think now they could really tie this president up in knots. But there just it doesn't even seem to be on the radar screen. Well,
as far as I'm concerned, he should be impeached. But because he's violated the Constitution, his oath of the Constitution, it's malfeasance of office, his dereliction of duty, it's just ignoring our Constitution and our laws. But here's the reason why. The Republicans took a shellacking after their impeachment efforts of Bill Clinton. And it showed up. The American people really didn't. And so they're taking that as the proof that they shouldn't do this. They want to win in 2016, so they're backing off of principle. And they've made it very clear, the messaging has gone out there to the conservatives, is they're not going to go down that track. And so they don't appreciate Ted Cruz and others who are saying, this guy is really so far down the road, you can't trust him. He is not doing the right things. He's doing the wrong things, and it will not help America. So I think he's impeachable, but they're not going to do it because they're afraid, again, just like they are, that if they put a conservative up, if a conservative comes forward and wins in these primaries, they're all afraid that, oh, everything's lost. Well, the fact of the matter is that the conservatives are the strength of the Republican Party. And there's a whole lot of people out there who are conservative, and they're looking for someone who will lead from a conservative standpoint and get us back to our Constitution and really take on the radicals head on. And the only one that I see doing that is, you could say Bobby Jindal is a bit, but Ted Cruz is the one who's outspoken. And I've met his father and had a good conversation with him down in Texas when I was at a conference there this last spring. But dynamo of a man, dynamo. And so Ted Cruz has, I can tell what his background is biblically in his heart and his right. But the establishment Republicans are going to do everything they can to put him down, to turn off the public because they don't want a conservative in there. And yet they love our votes, but they're going to lose them if they continue this track. They're the biggest hindrance to the growth of the Republican Party is the Karl Rove, the establishment Republicans who are maintaining their power. That's the main thing to them. It's not getting us back to the right place in America where we should be, but maintaining political power.
Okay, I got to take a break. When we come back, it does boil back to the question of what's the church's role in this? What is the Christian's role in this? Because I don't find the word quit in the Bible. It's just not there. And there's plenty of blame to go around, but we ourselves have to have a sense of duty. We ourselves have to, I mean, if we don't do it, who's going to do it? So anyway, I'll get your response on that. We'll take a quick break with David Crowe. Again, restoreamerica.org. Go there. It's a great resource for you, and support David. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're back, and our special guest today is Dave Crowe. Dave is the executive director of Restore America. It's an outstanding organization, and of course, the bottom line of the passion of Restore America is to make sure, A, that you understand the issues from a biblical perspective, and B, that you are registered to vote and that you vote. So we encourage you to go to restoreamerica.org. That is the website, restoreamerica.org, and there you can see all incredible amount of resources. Pastors, put Restore America on your bookmark, because it's just an amazing opportunity for you to have great information at your fingertips. And then also, if you're there and you feel led, support David there at the website as well, restoreamerica.org. All right, Dave, I guess we got you back on audio here for a little bit. Let me ask you this, going back to the question as we were going into the break. We Christians cannot be slipping in our sense of duty. In fact, if anything, our sense of duty should be maximized at this point. All of these problems and all of these issues provide an opportunity to present the gospel. And but yet, a lot of churches and Christians, and I say this with a broken heart, just don't see the need or the purpose of getting involved. What's your response?
First of all, I want to make sure you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Well, I think most Christians who are serious Christians have heard of 2 Chronicles 7:14. And there's other places in the scripture that we can go to as well, but that one sums it up. Unless my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven. Unless they do, there is really no hope for us. We're going to see more judgment and more of the wrath of God on America than anybody could even imagine. In fact, the rain falls on the just and the unjust alike. And so when we have problems in this nation, and we're headed towards serious, serious problems, they're right on the cusp right now, If the Christians are not praying, if we're not praying, if we're not seeing his face, seeking his face, and hearing his voice, and hearing what he has to say to us, we will not turn from our wicked ways. And so the first call is for humbling ourselves. As a nation of believers, we need to humble ourselves, just like Nehemiah did and said, "Oh God, me and my fathers, we have sinned. We all have sinned. We've stood on the sidelines. We have stayed out of the stadium or stayed out of the arena. We have gone fishing. We've done whatever we wanted to do, and we've enjoyed the good life and the good things of America and the blessings that we have, and we've taken them for granted. And it's time for us to stop that and to turn back to the Lord. And unless we do that and turn from our wicked ways, and those wicked ways are numerous, but only one of them is not voting, not being engaged, not watching over our neighbor, not watching over our nation's well-being. And if we don't do that as the body of Christ, then he's going to lift his hand. So if we truly do believe that God will intervene and wants to intervene and wants more time for America and more people to hear the gospel and be saved and their lives changed and set free, we must do that. That is fundamental to anything changing. Politics will not change things. Politics will not change government the way God can change government. And God wants to work through his people, a righteous people who have humbled themselves and will stand for his truth no matter what. And that's what we're called to do. And yes, are we supposed to engage in our churches, in our homes? We need to start this in our homes, in our churches, in our communities, and re-engage and call us back and away from this brink, morally and otherwise. We need to pray for the Supreme Court. They've got a big decision coming up here that could literally disembowel Obamacare, and I hope it does. But we need to pray that God will speak to those people so they understand what they're really doing and not just be moved by the winds of fashionable ideas. So I know that's kind of a long answer, Perry, but I don't see if there's any other way that we broach this, but we have to re-engage, not only prayerfully, spiritually, but in our communities and churches and in the nation, across the nation.
You know, it was brought to my attention by a pastor friend that in the scripture where it talks about the wheat and the tare is growing, and there's several references to that, that the instruction is let them grow together. Because if you tear the tare away from the wheat, you could pull up the good. And then it says, but then the Lord will reach in and take out the tare and separate it and bundle it and burn it. And I got a interesting, because if the wheat field is the church and we've got the tare sown among us, and it could come in numerous ways and subtleties that perhaps we've given into thinking it was okay. But from that, I'm sensing that as we enter into this time, there is a shaking. Everything that can be shaken will be shaken until the relationship between you and God can't be shaken. That out of this will come a remnant church that will be powerful, because what we're lacking in America right now, and we're not seeing, is a move of the Spirit. Some would say it's a revival or something like that, but we haven't seen a biblical move like we want to, or we read about in Scripture. And perhaps all of this desperation would get us to begin to petition heaven for such a move. But it appears to me that God is beginning to separate these things because they become more clear what is biblical and what isn't.
I agree. Remember the scripture in Zechariah which says, not by might, not by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. It is the Spirit of God that has to touch our hearts and change us. We will not, through all of our organizations and through all of our efforts in politics and waving of placards and all of that, we will not change what really needs to be changed. The human heart needs to be changed. And if God has to do this, he will create such calamity that hearts will be truly in desperate shape. And and call out to God and say, oh, God, save us. We need to be doing that now and recognizing from the signs that are about us that we are in the end times. And if we care about our children and our families and our neighbors, we will be preparing for these times personally. Mm-hmm. And that's where change has to happen. Unless the Spirit of God penetrates my hard heart and puts his finger on the things that I need to let go of, or attitudes I need to change, forgiveness that I need to ask from other people. If it's not happening in my heart and not happening in the hearts of Christians across the country, things will not get better. They will get worse. And we need to face that fact. Judgment is coming, and it starts at the house of God.
Yeah. David, thank you for your time. I know you're busy, and thank you for your passion and what you do and the service that you provide and your long hours and your many trips around the country and in and out of Oregon. I want to say to our viewers and listeners, go to restoreamerica.org. Again, it's an incredible resource. He's got so much information there, and a lot of it is directly related to Oregon. And check that out. Support him if you feel led to do that, and let me encourage you to pray about doing that. David, thank you, my friend. Say hi to Marilee. And are you going to be at the NRB?
You know, I might be. I was wondering about that, too. I'd love to see if you're going to be there.
Yeah, we'll be there, so maybe we can catch up.
Yep, let's do. Okay?
Love you, bro. Take it easy.
Take care.
Okay, bye. And let me just say in closing, I think a part of what we're dealing with here today is, forgive me if I sound like a broken record, but I think it sums up in the life issue. I truly believe that if we can get our heads clear on the life issue, the sanctity of life, stopping abortion, it will be a major step in turning things around in this country. It will get the attention of God. Of all the things that God has created, and if you look at this world in all of its majesty and wonder and the beauty of it and the various continents and the creation of it and the seas and the lands and the hills and the rivers and the oceans, I mean, it's just remarkable. And all of that was done by the voice of God. But of all the things he created, he only created one that was in his own likeness and his image, and it was human beings. And if we don't understand that we're killing the one thing that he created that was in his likeness and image, we're in deep trouble. And so I really believe one of the things that I am really encouraging you to pray about is to get involved in the life issue. And be there Thursday night at First Baptist Church at 7 o'clock in the evening, 7 o'clock in the evening, for this year's commemoration of Roe versus Wade. And let's fill that place up. Let's pray. Let's get together. Let's seek God's face. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And if you can, be there Thursday night at 7 o'clock at First Baptist Church. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim, and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.